Let's call the school board meeting to order. Treasurer, take roll, please.
Colonel Evans?
Here.
Mr. Grozan?
Here.
Mrs. Ludwig?
Here.
Mr. Miko?
Here.
Mr. Naso?
Here,
All present.
pledge of allegiance. Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, district goals. We have 3 goals, and we state them at every board meeting. The first one is student achievement, and that's the primary goal, and all other goals and everything we do works to drive student achievement. The second one is financial prudence, and every decision we make is to spend every tax dollar the best we can to maximize student achievement. And the third is community engagement, and we use our community volunteers, we rely on them to help us through with issues and to help and their time and their expertise to get us ahead. So we appreciate that. That being said, public comment, we do have a public comment tonight. Michael Alcox. Please come up, state your name and address. You have 3 minutes. Please don't use any names or anything. And we welcome your comments around the levy and the 5-year budget.
My name is Michael Alcox, 13984 Trenton Oval, Strongsville. Basically, you never hear from me. The last time you heard from me was 2011. In fact, Mr. Naso, I have emails from you and between us about the problems with the 5-year budget in 2011. I've read about the new levy and the amount of money it's going to raise, and to be honest, I have a significant problem with the level of both the revenues projected in the 5-year budget and the expenditures. I would like to meet with George, I guess, sometime the way I did back in 2011, and hopefully spend a couple hours going over it in detail. But frankly, I think there are significant issues with it that haven't been addressed. And I'll leave it at that until I meet.
Okay, well, we could set that up. I think you're going to find that there aren't significant issues. I mean, I've gone through with a pretty fine-tooth comb. The only big, we've got growing, there's assumptions on expense as it increases, and really the only decrease is the LTIP as that goes down is really the driving factor. But we could save all that, and you can work with George and go through. We're happy to hear what you have to say and see what you have, and we're always welcome any help we can get. So we appreciate it.
I will do so. You might disagree with my conclusions after that, but again, I anticipate having significant issues that I've already started discussing, and I believe they're valid issues, whether you agree with the assumptions underlying it or not. But I will certainly communicate that after we've had a chance to make sure whether our assumptions are based on accurate information, let's call it.
Yeah.
So,
You know, the one thing I know is that our forecast was at one point, or recently, we looked at it, and we were off by about 5 to 6% on our budget accuracy. And then we tweaked it down to get even lower than that. So the actual results that we get are within a very, at least on the short term, right, basis, are pretty darn precise for the size of the number. And most of the numbers, they're not that unknown. They're pretty well known, so.
well, I believe that there's $30 to $50 million of total items that I would dispute if I were preparing the budget. For example, as I was discussing earlier, you project no decline in teacher or staffing requirements over the next 5 years. And yet we've lost an average of 153 students per year for the last 13 years. And based upon my projections and the current census by class of our school system, I believe the next 5 years are going to see between 100 and 150 additional children dropping out of the system during that period of time. And you mentioned specifically, and I give you credit, I think it's done a very good job of basically having 22% fewer employee count mirroring the population decline of the students. But in the 5-year budget, you actually project a 3% increase in workers compared to what I believe, and I believe I can support it numerically, which will be a 13% decline over the next 5 years in the total population of students. And that alone is potentially between $10 and $15 million of cost savings
If I could,
over the 5-year period.
if I could mention real quick, how
Yeah.
familiar are you with Hunting Meadows?
Reasonably so.
Reasonably so?
Yeah.
Do you know how many new families have just moved into that neighborhood?
No? How many?
There are 5 brand-new babies just on Carl Street alone. What you've seen, and we've done the De Jong studies, is you've now starting to see the bottoming out of a lot of our population base with our children itself. Now, hang on a second.
Okay.
Plus also, the thing that I think you're also going to need to understand is the unfunded mandates coming from Columbus and the federal government. So there are more unfunded mandates, requirements by us to place more employees for children that need additional help. Plus also, again, and I've been on the board for 6, 7 years. When we built the middle school, we were very careful on the actual population growth of the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students. I think you're starting to see a bottoming out of that population base because of the strength of our school district and our community. More people are buying community homes in our district, within our community boundaries, rehabbing those houses and bringing their children into Strongsville.
Well,
Just a thought.
as I was saying, and I just have it here, your average high school class is 479, averaging the 4. Your average 4th through 8th grade classes are 371 average. And your average 1st through 4th grades are, I think it was like 321. I actually have the
The
numbers
math you're
over
doing
here.
is exactly how we do the budget. We take the enrollment and we roll the classes forward. That's how it's built.
But in that case, you're going to lose 100 to 150 students over the next 5 years, and yet you're not projecting any decline in employee cost over that period
No,
after
I'm not
having
saying-
a decline
no.
of 22%.
Well, there's compensation and benefit increases in the salary in the compensation numbers.
I
that
understand, but
include
you're
it.
not showing any reduction in staffing level at all, despite the fact there could be 650 less students in 5 years.
That's not, I don't believe that's correct.
Well, I have the numbers. I'll be
Well,
glad to go over those with you
We'll
after
go over those
the...
with George, but I think you're going to find that you're not correct. But
Well,
we're happy to have you sit down
I
and
would
listen.
love somebody to tell me how that's not going to happen. How is an extra 150 students going to enroll in 5th grade that aren't in 4th grade?
We build our budget by rolling the years forward.
Well-
So whatever you're looking at, you might not be seeing it correctly. But we'll
Well,
go
I
through it.
have the numbers. I mean,
I
I would just
agree
like
you're
to
looking at something.
understand
I don't know
then
what you're
why
looking at.
those numbers don't translate into a different assumption.
Okay.
as
Well, you
an
can
example.
sit with George and go through it, and then,
Okay, I mean, we might at the end disagree in our assumptions, is what I'm saying, but I would believe that based upon the population of students, my assumptions are much more founded than a no decline.
Well, one of the things, and I appreciate you for being here and doing your analysis and, sitting down with George and sharing what you found, because we can always take a look at, that's what we're always looking for. How can we continue to increase revenues and keep expenditures as low as we possibly can? So whether we agree on every point or not, some insights that you share will always be helpful to take a look at. The one thing in enrollment that I'll just address before we wrap up with public comment is you're exactly correct in your analysis. That's what's happening. You're graduating high 400s, low 500s at the high school. You're bringing in mid 300s in the elementary school. So mathematically, that 100 to 150 gap is there. But if you look at our overall enrollment the last 2 years, it's been pretty stagnant. So I don't have the numbers in front of me, but what we're seeing to fill that gap is new enrollees specifically in the middle school.
Actually, I have that number in my briefcase.
Yeah.
If you'd like, I could
Oh,
find
I
it
have
for
it.
you.
I have the numbers, just not at the top of my head.
Okay.
So that's the one thing, that's the one difference that has happened is we've started to see full-day kindergarten and kindergarten numbers start to pick up a little bit where the gap isn't so large. And then our new kids that are enrolling in summer, specifically in grades 6th, 7th, and 8th at the middle school is what is closing that gap. So if you just look back on our website, there's district enrollment. You could see the total enrollment as of May, which I'm sure you've looked at. to
I
get the
have it
numbers.
in my briefcase.
One of the things, at least in the last 2 years, you'll see that enrollment, overall enrollment, has remained relatively consistent. It's kind of leveled off. And that's kind of where, right now, we have, with the middle school going into its 3rd year, we've picked up an average of 80 to 100 middle schoolers each year. And if that trend continues, it's not going to be that 150 student swing. But like I said, I think we can sit here and talk, in general, but I think sitting down with George, showing the data that you have, sharing what we've got, that's where we can have some meaningful discussions.
And I agree with that. I mean, my assumptions are based upon information. I have basically all your information. And my assumptions are based on what I believe those numbers show me.
Sure.
And very honestly, I've reviewed thousands of budgets over my career. So I'm well aware of budgets and so forth. And I don't see it, but if George can convince me that somehow the numbers are reflecting something other than my conclusion today draws, I'd be glad to hear that, so.
Okay.
And
I'm
after you
certain
talk
that'll
with
be the
George, if
case.
there's anything else that I can add, any insight, I'd be more than happy to meet with you.
That's only one, by the way, of more than a dozen different items, so.
Sure, I understand.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Going on the superintendent, treasurer's report, there's nothing this month.
George already wants to talk to him.
No.
I was gonna say, Don, if you can get his contact information.
So nothing on treasurer's report for this month. Superintendent's report under timely information. We do have one presentation. I'm going to ask George Appleby if you want to come get situated over there. George is a member of our Community Advisory Council. So but almost 2 years ago, as a district, we've sat down and said, we're striving in our 2020 plan to be a premier district in the region and in the state. And we got together a group of community members and looked at what does that mean for us in athletics and arts and extracurriculars. So George has been a member of the extracurricular group, and we've been working together. It's besides Dan Faust and me, it's all community members that are a part of it. And they've been taking a look at extracurriculars in our district, and George is representing that subcommittee. And has a short presentation for the board. So he'll go through his slides. If there's any questions during, please ask, and then there'll be an opportunity at the end for open discussion. So George, thank you for being here.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for letting me present to the board this evening. And it's been a pleasure working with Cameron and Dan through this project. Our recommendation is around extracurricular activities. And here's the council members that were on the project with me, Alicia Castellano, Jim Foster, Lori Mahaka, Amy McEntee, and Darlene Wilk, Dan and Cameron as well. And really the purpose of the council was to engage in open dialogue between the community as well as the district. We met quarterly to go through the different programs. There was one around athletics, there was one around arts, and then this one around extracurricular activities that I was involved in. And just looking for opportunities and challenges to, exist in our district around the different groups, the different levels of the organization with elementary school, middle school, and the high school. Again, our main focus was around elementary extracurricular opportunities, and really was to explore those opportunities around the athletics, arts, and extracurriculars, and ensure that we were delivering a premier experience for our students. The vision. So the first question that we were asked when we originally came into the council was, in a perfect world, what would extracurriculars look like in Strongsville? So one of the things I've noticed as a parent of a student in the district was that there's a lot of things that are centered around sports and stuff like that, but not so much the extracurricular activities. The kids who aren't involved in the sports, that we wanted to look at how can we get them involved in some things. So more engagement of students of all grades, provide an environment to grow talent at every level, right? Whether it be sports, whether it be choir, whether it be STEM, that type of stuff. And then make it more affordable for all the students in the district and the families. Currently, here are the different extracurriculars. As you can see, the blue is school run and free, and the red, outside provider paid, different things that go on. So there's quite a few things that happen within the different elementary schools that are actually outside funded by the families and stuff like that. So our guiding principles were create an opportunity for all students to be involved in this different programs, and then also have a consistency around the programs that are provided to the students, so that there wasn't one school doing one thing, one school doing another thing, and actually putting some structure around those programs. Working with the school principals, the recommendation was to come through for all the buildings to have the service and learning, which all the schools currently have student council today. From an arts perspective, having all the schools have a choir program in elementary. Then from an athletics, health, and or fitness, intramurals. And then from a STEM perspective, the maker space. And then in addition to that, each principal asked for one additional program in their building. Chapman Art Club, Kinsner would be Safety Patrol or Girls on the Run, Muraski Kindness Crew, Sarar Art Club or Safety Patrol, and then Whitney would be academic assistance, so some kids who actually want extra assistance after school, providing them that. The finances around this, based on working with Cameron and Dan, were the range for the per extracurricular have been between $2,300 and $2,800. So the total for the new 4 new extracurriculars at the 5 buildings would be anywhere from $46,000 to $55,000. Working with Cameron, also there's 2 7th grade football teams currently at the Strongsville Middle School. We would reduce it to 1 so that there'd be more involvement from just that one team, which would reduce the overall by $13,000 to $15,000. So in all, the total expenses would be about $40,000 for the additional 4 extracurriculars at the 5 buildings, which is about 0.06% of the overall school budget. I think the school budget's right around 67 to 70 million, so if you do the quick math, it's about 0.06% of that overall budget. And then the next steps would be pending some direction from you guys. So again, it goes back to involving everybody at all levels, connecting Strongsville High School students to become involved in some of these programs. A lot of them want to be involved in community programs, that type of stuff. How do we leverage those kids who want to be involved in those programs to actually build our elementary school kids as they grow older, and then maybe, that program will then get them to actually, give back as they become high school students. Partner with local businesses and explore financial sponsorship from them. I know in part of the program, or part of the meetings, we talked about having some of these local businesses, just the same as the stadium has Serpentini on their, getting them to actually, $40,000 is not, in the grand scheme of things, a ton of money overall. How do we actually get them to sponsor some of those things? And then finalize the consistent expectations per the extracurricular activity, which would be part of the council. And then leave it up for discussion, questions, and feedback.
So, a couple questions I have.
Yes.
Every elementary building except for Sarar has a choir. How is that done currently? Is that a music teacher? How is that being conducted right now?
Currently, how it's working is if they have the ability within their teaching schedule to fit that in, that they're able to do that and do that currently. So that's the main reason. Some teachers have, when you look at a music degree, it's a music degree K to 12. So you could be a vocalist and you have the same degree as a band person or as an orchestral person. So some people may also have more of an affinity for vocal piece of it versus a band or instrumentation.
How are the makerspace rooms going in the elementary buildings? Are they all done?
They're all done.
And then my only other question was, we've got a lot of kids at the middle school. We sure we want to tailor back, to have 2 football teams, have 1 football team? I mean, and I'm fine with it. I mean, those are your kinds of decisions, not my kind of decisions. But, I mean, it's just a question.
So the recommendation to go to 1 came from our head football coach.
Okay.
So he met with the middle school staff. They tried for 2 football teams this past year. Based on the amount of injuries that happened, that happened through the course of any football season, it really wasn't a safe environment to put 2 separate teams. They did not have enough players typically or almost to finish the season. And so based on, if you look at football numbers statewide, nationwide, they're drastically declining. And so there just simply isn't enough kids to have 2 7th grade football teams. And so they decided, based on Coach Sereno's recommendation, that it would be best to focus the efforts with 1. So those supplemental contracts are not going to be used, and that savings could be allocated to help defer the cost of the recommendation from the council.
And my one last comment is, there are many, many civic groups within Strongsville that work extremely hard for scholarships and, a new piano at the high school and those kinds of things. Presenting this opportunity to Rotary, Civic, the City Club and everything else, I think you'd have a lot of traction. Just my opinion.
Great, thank you.
I'd like to know what happens to the outsider provider paid activities now, specifically the languages and the eager engineers, those things. What happens to those?
I don't think they go away. They're paid for by the parents today, so they would continue to be paid for by the parents. I don't know that
Okay.
there's anything that we would take away from
I
those.
think Jenny might agree with me, but one of the things I've noticed when I was stationed overseas is that Americans are generally the only monolingual people around.
I would
The
agree,
rest of
sir.
the world speaks 5, 6 languages as a routine. So having our elementary kids get exposed when their brains can soak that up so easily, that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
It would be something that would add to their viability in the business world, certainly later on. So I don't know.
I agree. I got to experience that while I was overseas in the military as well, so,
Yeah, so that you understand.
yes.
I'd just like to see maybe, I realize you had to cut it back, but I think the adventures in languages or something similar would be very helpful to the kids.
Okay, great.
And I appreciate the effort that went into this, because that was exactly what the charge was to look to see how balanced are the offerings. Are they all sports? I mean, do you have your choice between sports and band or, or orchestra or
Right.
whatever? Those are your only 2 options. And the goal was to try to balance it out so that we made sure that we were reaching all the kids and not just a certain segment of them. So thank you for going through and categorizing it by schools, and we'll certainly take a look at it. It's a good recommendation. I know a lot of thought went into it. I attended some of the meetings, and there was some good discussion, and thank you. That was a good job. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anybody
Well,
else?
yeah.
Jane? Jane, that's got to be,
I appreciate all the thought that's gone into this, and like 12 years ago, we had a strategic plan committee that went through and did the exact same thing. And we came to the same conclusions, basically. More opportunities is always better for the students. I'd like to be able to say, maybe we could think outside the box a little bit, and instead of having 1 supplemental contract, that we would split it in half, because maybe it doesn't cover the whole year. Like a student council supplement covers an entire school year, but maybe we'd have STEM club just during the winter time because then they want to do sports or something in the springtime to maybe increase our ability to offer more options and, or even make it less expensive if we didn't have it. A challenge I do see is finding a staff member or a person that would be willing to be qualified to teach a foreign language supplemental. I mean, I agree, the earlier, Dora the Explorer, we could put her on and we can all learn Spanish. So I don't know if you thought about those things. If we are going to go down this path, I would like to see very clear expectations on how many times they're going to meet and what's involved with these extracurriculars to indeed make it uniform across the schools so that you don't have one school that has this, okay, we're going to meet 3 times a week, and another, okay, once a month is good for us.
Right.
So I don't know if we want to charge you to go to the next level and do that, or if that's something that Cameron would want to be able to organize, or.
If there's, Ms. Ludwig, if there's interest from the board of continuing to explore the idea, I know the council would be more than willing to get into that level of detail and talk about that and come back at another time to share that. So we, George is representing the committee, just wanted to kind of put it out there as their recommendation. We did spend a lot of time at the last meeting looking at our financial forecast and, the fact that we are now officially on the ballot for November for a levy. And so, we wanted to see if there was any interest and kind of a time frame for that interest. And I know the council would be more than happy to get together and work on that.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think it would be good. I think, to George's point, I think we got to look at we got to find a way to pay for this to some extent. We've got a levy up there because the out years are looking tougher and tougher with all the funding cuts. And so I think maybe part of it as well could be coming up with some ideas on how, what civic or business entities might
Okay.
be willing to sponsor some of these events, some of these classes and extracurriculars, so.
Sounds great.
I like the idea.
I do too. I think it's great.
And for me, it's about consistency. It's about being able to say we offer choir or whatever that might be through all of our elementary buildings, still giving the principals an opportunity to have a choice, but to be able to have a consistency through that. And, we have the buildings. How nice would it be to bring all the elementary kids together and have a choir practice or, or a concert or something of that nature? For me, I love the idea of the consistency, and also you're opening a child's mind to something else.
Agreed.
And when you can spark an interest, when you can spark an idea, when you can spark thought within, instead of my 12-year-old loves to play video games. It drives me crazy. I tell him what my mom told me. Outside, just go out. Dad, I don't have any friends, but I don't care. Go outside, find something to do. I love the idea. It's just now I think we need to get into a bit more detail.
So keep up the work. I'd say we continue the effort.
Okay.
We like it, makes sense.
Richard's got some.
No, Richard.
Just a detailed question. You have intramurals.
Yes.
At the elementary level, we already have the SFL, we already have Little League Baseball, we already have the basketball, et cetera. Are we cannibalizing, or is there a different vision for intramurals paid for by the school district?
So I think there's a little bit different vision there, right? So, I guess I'll date myself back to when I was in elementary school and back in a long time ago. Anyway, so we had intramurals there, right? And it was actually high school students who would come in, and whether it be a quick basketball over the weekend or something like that. No, we had the high school gym that we used on the weekends in North Royalton. That's where I graduated from. But we called it biddy basketball, right? And so, but the kids who played varsity basketball actually coached the kids. So I don't think it takes away from those, because those are still, you have parents who are going to want to have their kids in the club sports, right? Because they want to maybe their kid's really good at sports and they think they're going to go, pro or get a full
Maybe
ride
they
from a
think
school.
their kid's really good.
Yeah, or they're going to get a full ride scholarship to college or something like that. None of that changes, but the competition level, when you get into those sports, is far gonna outweigh what you have in the intramural sports program.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's against the opportunity. I just think it's important to say, if we don't get corporate funding for this, I'm loath at this point in time to tax this on our existing budget. I think we need to wait till November to see what response we have. But, it is about opportunity, and that's what that levy is about. But to go forward now and pay for an expansion, I don't think is wise.
Great.
Excellent, well, thank you.
Great, thanks, appreciate your time again, and look forward to
Appreciate the
working with you. Thank you.
That
for the
third
work.
goal, community engagement, we appreciate, great minds getting in a room and putting some effort forward and going through it in that detail for us, so thank you.
Thank you.
And I'd also like to thank, we have a Community Advisory Council colleague with us in the back there, so
Yeah.
thank you for being here and supporting and being a part of the group as well. We appreciate it. With that, you guys are more than welcome to stay, but you can go.
Sal, you can go.
You can go too. So we are going to move on with the business service report. Steve Breckner, Operations Manager, has a variety of things for your consideration this month.
Good evening, everyone. There's 4 items on the agenda for your consideration tonight. The first one is the secure entryway. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education approves the awarded as a design-build contract for secure entryway for Chapman, Moraski, Sarrar, and Whitney Elementary Schools, and athletic entryway at Strongsville High School with RFC Contracting LLC, not to exceed $600,000 as stated in the exhibit. And there is a bit of a correction. The bulk of the funding will be from the construction fund, the 004, in the amount of $401,484. And then the rest of that, $198,560, will come from the 003 permanent improvement, specifically from the proceeds from the Drake sale, the Drake property.
So moved.
Can I have a motion?
George moved, I'll second.
You can't make a motion until I ask for a motion.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Excellent. Any discussion? I know that Roger's gone through this with a fine-tooth comb, and we're thankful for his. I know, George, any comments on it?
It's a critical measure with today's world and what's happening in today's community. We need secured entrances where the people in the office can dictate who comes in and who comes out of those buildings, period. It's just critical.
Any other comments?
Do we have a timeline on when they will be completed?
Right now, we're going to, with your approval, we would have the contract signed. That would allow us to, because of design build and the way that it's structured, RFC Contracting is putting out for bid. It would be dependent on those bids coming back, the amount of the bids and when the work could start. Being optimistic, as soon as possible, is what I want to be able to do, get those bids back and start in the next week or week and a half.
So
Steve.
finish before before school starts.
That's the goal.
And Steve, just to be clear for ourselves and the public, this is, at an earlier meeting, we waived our normal process because time is of the essence and we need to get this done as soon as possible, if not at the beginning of school, shortly thereafter.
Correct.
Okay, any further discussion? So we'll make that notation change on where the two funds instead of the one. George will make that change and take roll.
Mr. Grozan?
Yes.
Colonel Evans?
Yes.
Mrs. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mr. Naso?
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you.
The second item is the copier printer lease agreement. Be resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education approves the awarded 5-year lease agreement for copiers and printers with ACE, with monthly payments of $2,967.96. not to exceed the amount of $178,077.60 over 5 years. Funding to be from the Permanent Improvement Fund.
Can I have a motion?
So move.
Second?
Second?
Thank you, George. Any discussion?
Does this always come out of the Permanent Improvement Fund?
Right now, we haven't had a lease. The printers, the copiers that we have, they were purchased.
Okay.
So this is a capital lease where at the end, we would have them, they'd be ours. We have the option to buy them for $1.
They're
So at
probably
the
worth
end-
50 cents, or?
No, the idea, I was talking to Steve, the idea is to keep.
I'll try and go
them for-
99 cents and negotiate.
Hopefully they're worth $1.25.
Yeah, the idea is it's a capital asset that'll come
Okay,
on.
I just,
We have the option to buy them for $1, and I've conversations with Steve, is that the plan is to purchase them for $1 and continue using them after the lease expires.
I had an opportunity to sit with Steve last Friday. There are some copies where we can't even buy parts for anymore. I mean, they're not supported anymore. So for me, it's a no-brainer, because the idea of per copy on a copier, the cost of printing on that piece of paper is far less than having a few hundred individual printers and bubble jet printers throughout the school district. If we can get everything linked together and we're starting to use copiers for this purpose, it greatly reduces our costs.
So, and I just wanted to add, I reviewed the leases. Some people find them boring, some people find them interesting. But I did review the leases, and it is very reasonable. Printing today, copiers today, you can try to purchase them and save some money that way. You can try to lease them. Right now, leasing them is probably a little wiser. Companies want to loan money, and the rates are attractive. But it becomes similar to a car. You know you're going to have wear and tear, you know you're going to have a certain amount of maintenance, and this allows us to have a consistent price over that period of time. And with the buyout being the dollar buyout instead of fair market value, it's kind of a crapshoot on whether it'll be bully for us or not. Copiers are no different than any other computer technology today. Trying to hedge your bets on 5-6 years from now. We'll wait until 5-6 years from now and see what makes the most sense.
And if I may, to piggyback off that, with the agreement, we can move the copiers unlimited amounts of time. What that means is if we find a copiers in an area where it's not getting high traffic, but it could actually handle a bigger workload than it's receiving, we can then, through the agreement, call ACE up and have that moved immediately. So that way we can sift through the fleet and make sure that it's being balanced as far as the use, so we can mitigate some of the wear and tear on the larger machines.
And then, does this lease agreement also include maintenance for those machines?
Yes.
Okay.
It also includes replacement if one was to become irreparable. It would be
So
replacement.
it's
in there.
insurance as well. So, okay, excellent. Yeah, the rate's good. We need them.
We spend way too much money on individual printer
Printers,
cartridges.
exactly. Oh, yeah. Way more efficient. George, you want to take a roll?
Colonel Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Grozan?
Yes.
Mrs. Ludwig?
yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mr. Naso?
Yes.
Motion passes.
The third item is the paper cut. Be it resolved upon recommendation of superintendent that the Board of Education approves the awarded contract for paper cut with ACE in the amount of $34,303, funding to be from the Permanent Improvement Fund, and this is also a 5-year software program that we're purchasing.
Have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, George.
Second.
Thank you, Duke. Any discussion?
I'll just add, it's a really nice program, and when used effectively, it does save money. Used effectively and used correctly, it will pay for itself.
The estimates are between 12 to 15% of paper waste will be eliminated through the use of paper cut the first year.
Good deal.
Explain to me real quick what paper cut's gonna do
Okay.
and how it works.
So paper cut, right now, if you're in Strongsville, you hit Control P, and you can choose a vast number of printers that you can print to, or a few number of printers, depending on the machine. But what paper cut does is it takes it from being, you're actually printing to a printer, to you're actually storing it to a server. So you're going to the mythical cloud, of course. And then when you go to any printer in the network, which will be any printer hooked up in the district, you could either enter a code or swipe your key card. It will then recognize who you are and say, would you like to print that job now? Summarizing. You can select your personal printer queue, and any of the jobs that you've wanted to print, you can either print them all, print some, delete some because you didn't mean to actually print it to that or put it to the server. What it will eliminate is inevitably, and it even happened to me today before the meeting, someone printed off an IEP and it printed off on my copier. They then printed off the same IEP again to the mailroom because they mistakenly printed it to my printer or my copier instead of the one that they wanted to go to. So we printed the same document twice, 20-page document. So 20 pages are no longer used. This will eliminate that because when you hit Control-P, you then go to the copier, swipe your key card or enter a code, then and only then will it print that job. It will also, in the case of IEPs, not have sensitive student information or for HR sensitive employee information, any sensitive information, just sitting on the copier or in that pile of, who printed this that every building has. So that's the paper waste they'll eliminate, and that's what PaperCut's going to be able to do to us. Also, there are some tools in there that will allow us to track how many copies are being done. It will give us a better level of oversight than we have right now with all the personal printing that's going on.
Excellent.
And I'll just throw out, and PaperCut became a business, this kind of software became a business because those situations in an organization of our size happen over and over again. You go to control print and you meant to print 2 copies and you print 222 copies. And usually you go, oh gosh, and nobody knows how to stop it. And they finally call Jim Hamelick and he finally stops it, but it's already printed 55 copies at that point. And, those kinds of things add up over time. The example that Steve used, but all of that stuff adds up. And then the other one is just the management thing where you can identify that person who really likes that color copier and really likes to print everything in color, and you need to have a gentle or stern conversation saying, we're gonna start charging your budget. And other organizations, that's how you actually get the compliance is you charge each department for their printing cost, and then suddenly everybody thinks a little bit more about how often to print in color versus black and white.
Isn't there the capability too of limiting, saying my swipe can only do 500 copies before you have a?
Yeah, there's.
Yep. So again, it's $34,000 is a lot of money, but it should pay for itself.
Yep. And that's 5 years, $34,000,
Correct.
right? Okay, George, you want to take roll?
Mr. Grozan?
Yes.
Colonel Evans?
Yes.
Mrs. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mr. Nasa?
Yes.
Motion passes.
The fourth item is a purchase of 2 Ford F-350 trucks. This will be paid out of the Permanent Improvement Fund. Be resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education approves the purchase of 2 2019 Ford F-350 trucks from Harrison Ford Wellington at the quoted total price of $80,762.44, funding to be from the Permanent Improvement Fund.
Have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. And the trucks are going to be used for?
These are maintenance vehicles.
Okay.
The one that's being replaced is a 16-year-old truck, and the other one's a 15-year-old truck. The 16-year-old truck will not pass inspections any longer. This is the last year. And that one we'll try and auction it, because we've been having success with people just taking those trucks and cannibalizing it for parts that we would better than scrap, but our last resort would be to scrap. The other truck it's reaching the end of its life, but we are 1 truck down. That would go to the athletic department so that they could use it whenever they're going to the middle school and taking some of the equipment over to the middle school to take care of that field and things of that nature. So
Steve, if I'm correct, the 16-year-old truck is basically Swiss cheese at this point with rust all the way through it, right?
correct. We had this year the mechanics had to fabricate some floorboards so that it didn't look like a Flintstone car.
Yeah.
Well, with the 15-year-old truck that we're keeping, let's just make sure, because sometimes it's best just to get rid of that equipment, because although sometimes it can serve a purpose to move it, you end up putting more maintenance into it, spending more money just to have this backup truck around that you're actually now costing us quite a bit of money. So keep an eye on that and
Okay.
get rid of it as quickly as you possibly can.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Take a vote. George?
Mr. Grozan?
Yes.
Colonel Evans?
Yes.
Mrs. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mr. Nasa?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Under curriculum, we have two items. The first is Lexia Learning. So as we shared, we recently were awarded a $1.2 million literacy grant through the Ohio Department of Education. Besides literacy, coaches, a part of it was buying the Lexia Learning. It's a reading intervention program. It's been piloted this past year at Kinsner Elementary School with huge success and praise by the teachers. So be it resolved, the recommendation that we pay to purchase 5 unlimited site licenses for Lexia Reading Core 5 at the cost of $49,500 to be utilized as an elementary reading intervention program for the 18-19 school year. And again, that will come from the grant funds. Second, we have an overnight trip for the high school boys and girls cross-country team to attend an overnight camp. It will take place August 5th through 9th at Lakeside Historical Village in Lakeside, Ohio. Transportation will be provided by the parents, and costs will be paid by the participating students in fundraising. Any questions on curriculum?
Nope.
Under student services, the McKeon Education Group, be it resolved upon the recommendation that we enter into an agreement with them in the amount of $35,101.08 for one part-time intervention specialist to service students with disabilities attending St. Joseph and John School, and that's found in Exhibit E. Again, as a public school district, we have the fiduciary responsibility to allocate federal grant dollars and to St. Joseph and John. So those are those dollars. We just are the financial steward of those. Next, we have Kids Link Neurobehavioral Center. Be it resolved, the recommendation that we enter into 3 agreements for students to receive placement for students with disabilities for the 18-19 school year. The first 2 at the cost of $78,000 a year, and the last one at the cost of $81,000 a year based on the student's unique needs and services best provided by Kids Link. Number 3, Educational Service Center of Northeast Ohio, be resolved upon the recommendation that we enter into a contract with them for admission of students for visual, audiology, and/or hearing impaired services for the 18-19 school year as found in Exhibit G. Educational Alternative Service Agreement, be it resolved around the recommendation that we enter into a tuition/excess cost agreement with them for placement of students with disabilities for the 18-19 school year as found in Exhibit H. And number 5, transportation for educational alternatives, be it resolved upon the recommendation that we enter into a transportation agreement with them to provide transportation services for the district students enrolled in educational alternative school locations during the 18-19 school year as found in Exhibit I, and those are students that currently have placement at those locations. Any questions for student services?
Nope, none.
So next, we have Human Resources, and with Jenny, our Spelko, our Assistant Superintendent. Jenny?
Thank you, Mr. Ryba. Under Human Resources, I have the following items for your consideration this evening. We have 1 resignation of a certificated staff member. Under E2, I have the following appointments for certificated staff members, and I would like to highlight a couple that are in the audience. Even though I told them they didn't have to be here, they still wanted to come and start learning about our district. So Amanda Brewer-Burton is here. She's going to be a speech-language pathologist for, I believe, our preschool, right? So Amanda, you want to come up and meet the board?
Congratulations.
Welcome.
Congratulations and welcome.
Welcome aboard.
Nice to meet you.
And also under our appointments for certificated, we have Steve Owens, who will be one of our literacy coaches, and he will be, I forget, Steve, which level you're doing. You're
I believe they said K1.
K1 is yours. Okay, very good. You want to come up and?
Run the gauntlet.
Pleasure.
Thanks for being here. Congratulations.
Congratulations and welcome. Pardon me?
We were Kent State?
Yep.
Kent State?
Yeah.
Very impressive, Steve.
Excellent.
Thanks for being here, both of you.
And Steve has a house that will count in Strongsville, right? And has a young one at home, so we look forward not only to having him as a new staff member, but his family being a part of our community as well. That's right.
That's right.
Exactly.
Continuing under E2, I have the appointments of non-certificated staff members, appointment of certificated summer school employee, appointments for non-certificated extended school year. Under E3, changes in hours for non-certificated staff. Under E4, changes in status for certificated. We have a recall from a reduction in force status. Continuing under E4, changes in status for non-certificated staff. Under E5, changes in salary for our certificated staff. Under E6, substitute rates for certificated staff. Under E7, we have one medical leave for administrative staff. Under E8, one volunteer coach. Under E9, we have the service agreement for McKeon Education Group. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education enters into an agreement with McKeon Education Group to provide remedial enrichment and intervention services for St. Joseph and John Interparochial School under auxiliary funding administered to approve non-public schools by local districts. So this is for direct therapy to school-age students and LD tutor and also full-time tutors and part-time tutors. And finally, under E10, we have the service agreement for Partners for Success and Innovation, PSI. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education enters into agreement with Partners for Success and Innovation to service pupils attending St. Joseph and John Interparochial School under auxiliary funding administered to approve non-public schools by local districts. The costs for these direct services are for school-age students and encompasses health assistant, registered nurses, speech-language pathologists, school psychologists, intervention specialists, and Title VI funded speech therapy. And that concludes my report, unless you have any questions for me.
Nope, thank you. Anybody any questions?
I was just going to say, I was thinking about this, the literacy grants are wonderful, and it's great that it's coming in, but in 3 years, we need to start thinking now what's going to happen in 3 years, because the funding will run out. I don't see the need running out, but I'm concerned that the federal government isn't going to be as generous as they are with the grant, so just something to keep on our radar.
Absolutely. There are no items under technology, and with that, that concludes the superintendent's report.
All right, that brings us to consent calendar. All items with an asterisk are voted on in one vote. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Duke. Second?
Second.
Thanks, Jane. There are no changes or alterations to any items with an asterisk. Any discussion on any consent items? George, take roll.
Colonel Evans?
Yes.
Mrs. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mr. Naso?
Yes.
Mr. Grozen?
Yes.
Motion passes.
That brings us to board bylaws and policies. These are the third and final readings, correct? Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, George.
Second.
Thank you, Jane. Any discussion on any of the policies?
May I?
Yes, you may, sir.
So, just want to report to the community that all of these policies were incredibly exciting to discuss. They are, for the majority, just the ability to bring them up to date with federal or state regulations. I will highlight just a few, and I will be brief. Policy 2271 is revision to our College Credit Plus program. The CCP program can be a great program and a great opportunity for our students, but the changes in the policy make sure we don't waste the taxpayers' money. If students aren't taking advantage of those classes, they can be put on probation, et cetera. Those classes are paid for by the taxpayer, so we want to make sure that those students that take those opportunities use it wisely. Policy 4121 and 4162 update some of our requirements for criminal history record check and drug and alcohol testing for our bus drivers. Ultimately, safety is very important everywhere, and obviously it is for our bus drivers, so we want to keep that up to date. Policy 7530 addresses the lending of board-owned equipment, and some of you may have heard stories about consultants or so on having laptops with social security numbers and taking them home, and they get stolen out of the back seat of the car, and where is this data? Well, the policy 7530 discusses that, and when teachers or employees take board-owned equipment, they need to be aware if there is sensitive data on it, they need to protect it and not forget it in the backseat of their car where it gets stolen.
But we haven't had anybody steal data.
We have not had anybody steal data, and we want to keep it that way. Policy 8400, I think is important. It keeps our emergency management plans up to date. It's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to put in a policy, and it's even more important to do it and to make sure that those management plans are in place and shared with our police, our fire, our different safety forces. And then the only other one I have to comment on is policy 8600.04, which is bus driver certification. They seem to have gotten the brunt, but it includes in violations, things that bus drivers can't do, like speeding, et cetera. But if a bus driver gets too many speeding tickets, they can't be a bus driver for us anymore. And texting while driving is now part of that list of offenses. It should be common sense. You shouldn't text while driving. Well, now it's in our policy for bus drivers. And that concludes my comments.
Excellent, good update. Can I have a motion?
Again,
Did we have
You
one
want
already?
another one?
Oh, let's go through this again. How about a vote?
Mr. Grozan?
Yes.
Mrs. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
yes.
Mr. Naso?
Yes.
Colonel Evans?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. That brings us to Board of Education, other. I don't have any other.
Homecoming is next Wednesday through Sunday. You can find me at the PETA tent on Wednesday and Thursday. So, but please come, enjoy, bring the kids. It's a lot of fun. And I'll make you a really good sandwich if you like.
The perfect pizza.
Anyone else? Nope, we're good. Meeting notifications, we have a school board meeting on August 2nd, 7 o'clock right here, and then another one on August 16th, 7 o'clock right here.
And Mr. Naso, we failed to put it on there, but just a reminder that we do have a special meeting, a board retreat on July 31st at 6 PM,
Yeah, okay.
which has already been notified and
It's
put out.
posted.
yeah.
Okay. We have no need for executive session.
No.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jane. George, take roll.
Colonel Evans?
Yes.
Mrs. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mr. Naso?
Yes.
Mr. Grozan?
Yes.
Meeting adjourned at 7:58 PM.
Excellent.